Lakeshore Public Media is crisscrossing the region, getting an up-close look at municipal government leaders with our new series, Meet the Mayor.
Today, we're in the city of Portage, Northwest Indiana's third largest city, sitting down with Mayor Austin Bonta. So, Mayor Bonta, I always like to start my conversation with political leaders with heavyweights such as yourself, because you are a heavyweight, right?
Thank you.
You are a heavyweight. I always like to start with a round of rapid fire questions, so I hope that you are okay with that. It helps me.
Sure. I'm not always super fast, but I can try my best.
Trust me, these are easy questions.
All right.
And you'll be okay. So it is okay if we start with that, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's start. What's the first thing you grab in the morning?
First thing I grab in the morning is actually probably my scapular.
What's that?
So this is something, it's a religious, I won't say like artifact, but it's something that I wear. It's part of being, Catholic, for me. And I tends to be the very first thing I do is I put that on like in the morning before I pray.
Absolutely. So let me ask you, who has had the most significant impact on your life?
On my life, probably a tie between my father and my grandfather. My dad, he grew up here in Portage. He was a manager at the mill, really two different mills. And then my grandfather, who was the deacon in our church for 40 years here at Nativity of Our Savior in Portage. Okay. And he was one of the first permanent deacons in the Diocese of Gary, and just left a big impact on me in terms of serving the community and how you serve others,
So let me ask you this, Mayor Bonta. How do you want your loved ones to remember you?
I think somebody who was always there to really provide for and protect the family and our community, so much as we have a responsibility to the community around us.
Okay, I think even from the few minutes that we spent together today, I think I know this answer, but I want to ask you, what trait defines you?
I think the determination.
Okay.
I think, I think that I try to be solution driven. I tend to not give up on things. Sometimes things take a while, but I want to say it's the determination.
Yeah. And I will add to that, I think that even in the few minutes that we spent together today, and even in my preparing for our interview today, I would add kindness to you. I think that you're probably one of the more kind
thank you.
Policymakers in the region. So I just want to throw that out. That's
really
kind of off the record,
that.
But it's on the record as well. I think that you're very kind and very gentle, and I think that you really care about your community.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So again, we're here in the region to get to know you and your community, Portage, right? Better. You are one of our neighbors in the region, and I want to start with this. So you were elected mayor in November of 2023, and prior to that, you've served on the Fire Merit Board, and you were on the Planning Commission as well, correct?
Yes.
Take a moment to tell our listening audience and our viewing audience what motivated you to get into city government.
So I was, when I got put on the Plan Commission in 2016, if I remember right, I think they wanted there to be a teacher, and I was a special education teacher at the time, and I taught in the Portage schools. And I think it had to be a Republican based on the rules they have, because different boards, they have no matter whether the mayor is a Democrat or a Republican, you have to have a certain amount of party balance on our boards.
Okay,
and so the seats that need to be filled, so they were like, well, we're looking for a Republican teacher. And there's more Republican teachers than maybe, you might guess, but I was kind of known because I had volunteered for some people's campaigns and whatnot, so I got put on the Plan Commission. And like a lot of people on various city boards here or anywhere, you kind of have to learn as you go. You learn from being on it. And my first year on the Plan Commission was a whole lot to learn. But the interesting thing for me is that by my 6th year on the Plan Commission, I was the second most senior member of the board.
Wow.
There was a lot of turnover over 3 administrations, and I ended up being something of if not a mentor, somebody who helped other people who got put on the board understand how the board works. And
that's interesting, and not to cut you off,
Sure.
but that's interesting because of your age, that you became a mentor for those that were on board and that were coming on. How exciting is that?
Oh, it was a great experience. And the thing about the Plan Commission is you learn so much about how the city runs, because so much of there's a bit of a misnomer with the Plan Commission. People think that that's like a board that just decides what goes where in the city. Really, it's more of like a judicial body. Their job is you've got a something coming in, it's gone through all the city hoops, and then it gets to you guys and you're doing the final review of does it meet code, is this building safe,
Okay.
But you see the whole process. And so to your question, I believe about what gets you to run or what, I saw a lot of what was struggling in our city, especially when it came to economic growth. I saw ideas, petitions, projects never make it to us because you're like seeing the process to us.
That's interesting. Okay.
That's one of the things I know on the campaign I was asked, it seems like most stuff that goes before the Plan Commission gets approved. So what do you mean that Portage is like, I think I said something like we often shoot ourselves in the foot when it comes to economic growth. People are like, well, what do you mean? It's not what you see that makes it all the way to that last step, which by that point all the stuff's been handled, all that. It's the stuff that's getting lost along the way,
Right.
We had issues with companies calling the city and never getting called back. And then
Wow.
you would have we would have issues with different procedural processes we had, essentially stopping things from moving forward. I could kind of go on in detail, but I know we've got time here. It's just I saw a lot that we could do better because I feel like with Portage, we are the third largest city in the region, which is a great thing. We're growing, but I felt that there was a lack of harmony between our business base and our residential base. We've got almost 40,000 people here, but they were driving 20 minutes south or west to go shopping or to work.
Right.
And the term I use is we want to be our own anchor.
Right.
We want to be able to have more businesses here so that people don't have to spend the gas and the time to drive elsewhere to do things, shop, be able to keep that here in our decently sized city.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So let me ask you, so you are among the newest crop of political leaders here in the region to use Facebook to communicate with the community, and you are quite active, I might add,
That's true.
using it. And it seems to be a departure from what we have seen in the past here in the city of Portage. And what I find most interesting about your usage of Facebook is that you respond in real time.
Pretty close, what I can, yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're quite busy, but you respond in real time. And I also note that you get or find answers to questions from community members in almost real time. And if you cannot, and you will even note in your Facebook post, I can't find the answer right now, but give me a moment, and then you will come back and post or contact the community member directly and say, this is what you need to do, or these are the steps, or this is the person that you want to talk to. So I want to ask you, is that what endears you? Is that what makes your administration, your leadership stand out in the city of Portage?
That's a great question. And I think that for me, I think that for all the talk about, what's the word? I think in a lot of ways, not just in Portage, not just in the region, but I think everywhere, I think social media has in many ways replaced or made up for a lack of the sort of neighborhood gossip and sort of neighborhood
That's a good
talk
point. Right.
that we used to have. So
Right.
I don't know how far back in time you gotta go, but in my mind, me being in the 5 or 6 Portage community groups, Portage 411 is probably the biggest, but there's also the What's Happened in Portage,
Right.
and every community in Northwest Indiana has a couple of those Facebook,
Right.
groups, what have you.
Yeah.
For me, participating in those groups, being available and being willing to be tagged, which has kind of become like a meme in itself.
Yes,
To
yeah,
me,
that's true.
I still go out to our city events. I still walk neighborhoods to check up on people as well. But I think that in an age where people used to basically gossip around the neighborhood,
Right.
that's really where I think go back far enough in time, a very, transparent mayor would be finding ways to participate in all that.
Yes.
So to me, being on social media, and in particular our community groups, that's a way to be where the people are and
Right.
where information is being disseminated.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're able to dispel misinformation as well, which
and
I think is so powerful.
Oh, it's powerful, and I think it's really important because when the community doesn't get information from the local government, rumors take over. They just
Right.
naturally do.
Right.
And knowing the sorts of things, if you can, that are probably going to lead to rumor if the information doesn't get sent out the right way.
That's actually a great point. So I want to stay on social media, Facebook in particular, for a moment. So
Sure.
obviously preparing for our conversation today, I did a lot of research obviously about you, and I did a lot of digging on those forums that you mentioned on Facebook, and I ran across a picture on Facebook of you with the mayor of Gary and the mayor of Michigan City, and I said, how cool is that? I thought that that was the coolest thing. So I want to talk more about how you in particular are working to foster relationships with other Northwest Indiana leaders and how it will help strengthen not only your city of Portage, but the entire region.
Sure. So I really believe very strongly that Northwest Indiana, the region, culturally, economically, not everybody thinks this, but I really take it to heart. I really believe that Northwest Indiana, whether some people want it to be true or not, it functions as one big city.
That's true.
I mean, thinking about myself, I grew up in Portage. I went to high school in Maryville when I went to Andran. My in-laws are in Munster. We go out there. We tie some of our shopping, you know, just because I'm just like other Portage people. Sometimes I have to travel to shop. We're working on that. Good. We've got people who live in one community, they work in another. We've got people who live just on the, think about everybody who's got the relative who doesn't quite live in town, but they feel like we do. So Northwest Indiana, culturally and economically, we're really one big city. And so if you think of all of the cities within it kind of like as neighborhoods, if you will, we've got to think about how we relate to each other. So with Angie and with Eddie, we had a great meeting here in Portage at Longhorn, and we talked about a lot of different things. It's really cool being 3 new mayors, and just kind of, we all had some advice we could give each other. We all had questions for each other. I think our big thing that we're starting with is the fact that we are the 3 gates to the national park. So Gary is the west gate, Portage is what we call the heart of the park, and then you've got Michigan City as the east gate of the park. And we got a new superintendent at the park, and he's really just come in and grabbed the bull by the horns. I'm really excited about.
He hit the ground running.
I'm so excited about what he's doing and how he's engaged everybody. What I think we've figured out is how do I put it? It would be so much smoother for the 3 of us to meet the park with like a joint agenda. You know, everything Eddie's got in mind for the park, I think is awesome. Same with my stuff and his. You know, for us to approach the park together really as 3 cities but one plan.
So is that what that luncheon was about?
It's what the end of it really turned into. I mean, we talked about everything from work on our sanitary districts to HR. You know, in my case, Portage, we never had an HR department for years. And
that's very true. As a matter of fact, you didn't have the size of staff in the city that you have now.
And if I remember right, you know, when you interview Eddie, I'm sure he can elaborate, but if I remember right, he was like curious, almost as curious as anybody about like, how did you not have HR for that long? But also like, what is it like building an HR department? And the answer is it's a journey because you're changing the culture of a city government, you know?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. So I want to stay on Portage being such a great spot, right? You talked about the proximity to the dunes and all of that. So you've got highways, the whole northern corridor with the Port of Indiana. And I always like to talk about tourism as an economic driver, right? So when you consider Portage's lakefront and Riverwalk, which we should note for our listening audience, which was a former slag dumping ground that was cleaned up and turned into the most visited unit of Indiana Dunes Park, the city of Portage is what I'm speaking about, has to be one of Northwest Indiana's best or most successful success stories, correct?
Oh, I would say so. Just to elaborate there, I mean, the Lakefront Riverwalk is one of my favorite places to go, and that's part of our conversations with the national park, because it's kind of funny. Every week I get a call or a Facebook message from somebody who says, how come we have to pay $25 to go to our beach and nobody else does? And I have to explain, that's because both of the Portage beaches are property of the national park. They, you know, got their own policy. You know, and then people are like, oh, okay, that makes sense, you know. But we've got a partnership with them. We're working on updating our MOU with the national park. So
what's that?
Memorandum of Understanding. Think like a treaty between us and the national park, if you will. So for us, that is huge to have those really 2 very visited beaches, and that's also where we want to work on making better accessibility, you know, to those beaches, and also more accessibility to what's currently our undeveloped north side. So Portage has, as you note with the highways, 44 million people drive through our city every year.
Wow.
Which is a number a lot of cities would love to have.
They would, right.
Portage has not, in my opinion, in the past really thought about how do we make the most out of that and getting the most number of people to come in and stop here, you know?
And spend dollars.
Spend dollars.
Obviously.
I mean, I
Right.
believe if the average, if you think about it, if we have 44 million people coming through, this isn't perfect math, but if the average family running through spends $45 to $68 while they're here, if
Right.
that's stopping for a restaurant, gas plus food, or
Right.
there's an attraction here, we could be talking $3.9 billion just off the highways when it
Wow.
comes to the city in time.
Right.
You know,
No, but that's right.
We also have, so one of my biggest projects, really one of the biggest priorities we have right now, is our push to extend Burns Parkway
Okay.
and bring it up to Hillcrest Road. That's going to be a $35 million project once we get it going, but it involves building a bridge over Burns Waterway
Okay.
and then connecting 249 to Route 12, ideally right at the Ogden Dunes intersection.
Okay.
What that does is it opens over 250 acres to immediate development and then more in the long term, because between the lake and 94, there's enough undeveloped land in the north side of Portage, contiguous undeveloped land. You can fit the city of Whiting in there minus the refinery.
Wow.
And so for us to plan ahead for how do
Wow.
you build essentially a neighborhood or a whole new section of a city that ties in, hopefully flawlessly, with the national park
Parks, right.
and the highway and we also have something that I think makes us unique. I think Gary has some great beaches, Michigan City has a great beach, but with Portage, we've got some great beaches too, but we also have the waterway. With Burns Waterway running through, the
Right.
ability to make a riverfront district, to bring in more restaurants, some hotels into that
Right.
area too. I really think that there's so much untapped potential there in the long term. And then in the short term, we've got a plan that we're working on to make Route 20 more conducive for business growth and also more walkable, if you can believe it.
No, that's the word. In the last decade, that walkable, that is the
Oh, yeah.
word. So I want to go back to you and your campaign, because you focused obviously running to become the next mayor of Portage. When you were running, you focused on financial responsibility, public safety, and again, you just spoke about this, attracting more to Portage. So I want to ask you, in your short time here being the mayor of Portage, what have you embarked upon to improve the quality of life in Portage?
Wow. So I think to start,
And I know it's a short time that you've been mayor.
yeah. So I think that, well, to kind of go in order, I don't want to say as I remember it, but just trying to kind of piece together.
Yeah.
Sorry if you ever see me do this. It's kind of like a,
No, go.
I mean, for us, it started with creating some better efficiency, in the government. I mean, the very first thing I did as mayor, it's not the most exciting thing, but the very first official action was I ended the free dumpsters at the street department.
Okay.
Portage
good.
had a policy where anybody from Portage, or in reality, anybody who knew somebody in Portage could dump whatever they wanted at the street department dumpsters, and it was never budgeted, and it was putting the department $100,000 in the red. We were actually spending $120,000,
Wow.
each year on that.
Yeah.
And you talk about like Facebook, that was where if I hadn't been in the community that way,
Right.
it wouldn't have made sense to anybody.
Okay.
You know.
Going back to your transparency and sharing.
And that got us to the next day, which was going over the issues we were having with the recycling program, which is to say that it hadn't recycled anything since 2021. And the department was actually running a truck twice, through the city each
Yeah.
day, picking up all of the stuff that was in people's recycling containers, but it was all going to landfill, and it had been going to landfill since 2021.
Wow.
Now, there's reasons for that. It wasn't like a conspiracy. If you had come and watched a city council meeting, it was talked about as a reality at almost every city council meeting. But unless you bring it out into the community in a way that people actually are going to hear it, it's, shocking,
Right.
But for us, I mean, we were spending potentially $180,000 to give the impression we had a recycling program. And
Wow.
in reality, it was all going to landfill. So our next step there was we stopped running the trucks twice. We reformed the way we did pickup. So, everybody's got the 2 toters now.
Okay.
And then we encouraged people to come and make use of the recycling drop-off at our street department. Now, our next step is creating better accessibility for people who, can't get there.
Okay.
But I
Makes
guess to
sense.
speak, so I say all that because I think that transparency is part of the quality of life. The fact that people suddenly, I think that there's a myth that local politicians sometimes fall for, which is nobody cares about this minutia. And I think the answer is a lot of people do. Not necessarily 100% or even 50%, but a great
Right.
deal of people in the community appreciate knowing how the government actually works and what steps are being taken. So the first month was very much kind of a teaching like how our city, runs,
Okay.
Like
that
I
makes
say,
sense.
we also, having an HR department, which took a little bit of doing. I had to find money within the city's budget to be able to hire someone to be our HR director. I had to get the city council to vote unanimously because I came in on a Monday. That very next day was the first city council meeting of the year. And that's where I needed them to do a unanimous vote to be able to suspend the rules, create the department, and then I hired the director on the third day.
Wow.
And so much of that, having an HR department, I mean, it went through everything of cleaning up some of our policies. There were documents that were referenced in city contracts that didn't exist or we couldn't find them. The union couldn't find them, and Lynn Graylick, our HR director, did a phenomenal job working with all the departments, working with the union to get all that together. We've updated everything from how we train departments in doing workman's comp, because it turned out that we hadn't been trained correctly on workman's comp.
Oh my goodness.
We
wow.
had issues with a drug testing policy that wasn't compliant with the Department of Transportation regulations, so we were able to put together a new policy that follows those regulations.
Oh my goodness.
We had a major illness policy, which was it still is, a great policy that the city had, and still has. But major illness was designed as a way that a city employee could earn paid days off if they qualified for FMLA time off, which was, it's a very neat thing that most cities don't have a policy like that. In fact, I haven't found anybody that does.
Okay.
But without an HR department, it was time that people could just use even if they didn't have the paperwork for FMLA. So we got it back on track that it had to run concurrently with FMLA.
Okay.
And by doing that, and also it was no longer something done at a public Board of Works meeting, it was a procedure done through an HR department, which transparency is important, but so is respecting the privacy of our
the
employees
individual.
and of the individual. So
makes sense.
we've also worked to handle that. And all of that was communicated, and I think that what that did is, I think that that was really the beginning of helping efficiency in the departments and updating, what needed to be done. So anyway, I think that that's more internal, but I think that you can kind of feel it when something is done.
You can feel a shift.
You can feel a shift, and you can feel it when you come into City Hall or you come into a department. Our next step for us was really building some confidence in the city. I think that this summer was a great example of this with Market on the Square. So Market on the Square, we've had it for years, but it's been a relatively low attended event, each Friday, in the summer. So we started, and my chief of staff, she's here in the audience, Leanne Van Kuren, she took the lead for dealing with the fact that we had a weekly farmers market with no farmers. We had people wonderful people selling great things like bow ties, and honestly, I buy these little and bow was for like your hair, and I bought one for my niece a couple times, and it's a great.
Not a farm.
We have, somebody was selling equipment for bathtubs, and things like that, which is all interesting stuff and still there.
Yeah,
but we wanted to have some farmers at the farmers market. And so Leanne took the lead, and we reached out and we found the person who runs the Cedar Lake Farmers Market, which is an amazing, if you've ever been, that's just an incredible.
Yeah.
And so we got a hold of Kelly, and we said, would you mind coming out to Portage?
Wow.
And I'm sorry if I'm taking too long to answer this or tell this story.
No, this is fine, because you're speaking now to the collaboration with other
So she
towns
came
in
out,
the
and
region.
one of the things I find interesting is people who don't get out of Lake County that often tend to not know Portage. And I think that's actually one of the biggest things when you talk about changing the perception of Portage. There's two things that people tend to notice about Portage when they come out. One is just how safe it is. Like you can just tell kind of I don't know how to put it. There's just a way you can tell that a place. But the second part is how big it is.
Right.
There's people who I think that we're very small. They don't necessarily know that we're the third largest in Northwest Indiana.
Right.
So she came out and she's like, wow, this place is huge. We can do something here. And so she started encouraging her vendors to come out, and she's partnered with us to get vendors who were, part of her with Hebron and Cedar Lake to come up to Portage.
Right.
We also then, we really promoted it, and I can say that we've had a couple hundred people, sometimes, over 1,000 people, at these, weekly events. So this program, this series, Market on the Square, just for example, last summer, it brought in a total for the city of for the whole 12 weeks last year, $4,300. We were over $6,000 by our third Market on the Square this year.
That's a big deal, considering the transformation that you have made just in your short time here. So I want to talk about, because we're talking about growth, right?
Yeah.
So you have a growing population as Northwest Indiana continues to trend upward with domestic migration, right? And as we sit here today, the city of Portage, or is the city of Portage able to keep up with the needs of not only the community, but for those that are migrating here? And when I ask you that, I'm speaking of housing and I'm speaking of jobs.
Absolutely. And simply put, that was really the heart of my campaign, was not just the need for economic growth, but the concern that our residential growth was outpacing our city's ability to handle it. I can tell you that we are making great steps to be able to get it. Right now, like, we're good. Like, if you move to Portage this year or next year, you're good.
Okay.
We've been making steps since January and throughout, this year to make sure that that stays good for everybody. Some of the work already began. So like the updates to our water treatment plant that was started under my predecessor, Sue Lynch, but with the same person, Tracy Marshall, running our sanitary plant. Tracy is, oh my goodness, just
awesome.
She knows her stuff, and she just, she knows how to run that plant, and she knows what it needs. I've continued the updates that we need, to the water treatment plant. I know that not everybody gets excited about rate increases, but it's important. We're getting ready for the city council to approve the increase in the sanitary rates so that we're able to properly finance the improvements we need to our pipes and to the plant itself. That's an important step because it's actually like when it comes to these like loans that you need to actually carry out this work, it's kind of like when you go to the bank. I don't know if you've ever rented a house before. Have you been a landlord before?
No.
Okay. Sometimes you'll have it where you might have like income that you make because people are paying you rent. You'll go to the bank, show them your income, ask for a loan, and the bank will be like, you don't make enough money for this loan. I'm like, yes,
boy.
I do. And they'll say, well, no, we can't count this income. We can.
Oh.
There's a level
Okay.
of revenue that your sanitary department has to have to be able to qualify for future SRF loans.
Okay.
And so for
Makes
us,
sense.
we're raising it to the minimum. We've got to raise it, but enough that we can keep up with the needs, for that department.
Okay.
So when it comes to the housing, we're shifting right now in the sense of, well, really two senses. So one, every city in Indiana should have or has to have a comprehensive plan. Best practice is to update that every 5 years. Portage hasn't updated ours in 15 years. And that was a big issue that came up, last year during the election. I talked a great deal about the need to update ours. Not only because there's grants that you can't qualify for unless you have an updated comprehensive plan, but also because you got to be able to show that you have a plan for growth that the community has bought into.
Okay.
And so for us, when it comes to our comp plan, what we're doing now is preparing for that process to start late this fall and going into next year. But the shift we're really trying to make is going from sprawl to the east and sprawl to the south to really repopulating and building up the core of the city. So I mentioned the extension of Burns Parkway and opening up that land for residential and commercial growth on the north side. But we also want to take advantage of really our downtown, which has so much more room, not just to grow with business, but also to grow with population in the center of the city.
Okay.
About 2 months ago, I had Jim Brainerd here. He's the former mayor of Carmel. And he and you say that and people think, oh no, he's trying to sell you on roundabouts. That's
I
not
was
what we
going to
talk
ask
about.
you, that
No.
was my next question.
But
Yep.
we walked from this building, City Hall, on foot, we walked from here all the way to Founders Square, and then we stopped and we surprised people at the Chamber of Commerce office just to say hello. But when we walked there, he said, Austin, do you realize something? I'm like, what? And he says, from City Hall to Founders Square, that's the size of downtown Carmel.
Wow. That's true. I didn't think about that
really
until you just said
had no
that.
idea.
That's
People
true.
don't see it because the way Portage, we were founded in 1959, and Portage was really designed and founded with the expectation we were going to be a suburb of Gary. And we really took off during the 70s and 80s suburban era. Everything was drive everywhere, wide roads, big parking lots.
Right.
And that's really what our downtown became, big parking lots, wide roads. Not too many downtowns that are really successful have a 5-lane road where the speed limit is 45 miles an hour, going down as their main road.
Right.
So part of what we want to do with our comprehensive plan is take a look at the core of our city and start saying, how do we make this dense? How do we make this walkable so that we're not just growing south and growing east until we hit, some endpoint. How is it that we start bringing people into the heart of the city?
Okay, so I'm going to leave you with this. And so you brought up the former mayor of Carmel, and I was going to ask you because I'm thinking about growth, economic growth, more people moving to Portage, and my concern is infrastructure and the roads. And so are you planning for that? This big boom of so many industries moving to Portage and so many community members from maybe across the state line and maybe from other cities in Northwest Indiana. Are you prepared road-wise, infrastructure-wise for that?
Absolutely, and that's why we've put a big focus on improving, fixing up, and redoing existing roads in parts of town that are ready for a renaissance.
Okay.
And we've been really putting that as a focus on the money we have coming in. I'll explain that part in a minute. So for example, towards the end of the spring, Sandy, who works in our planning department, she's the assistant director, she was so excited. And she came to me and she said, I'm so excited. I'm like, what's going on? She said, okay, so you have all the different road projects that we have going on this year, and you have the bids, and you pick the bids, and a lot of them end up being under what you budget for, because you budget for what you think it's going to cost, but sometimes things come in under budget. So she put together all the money we had left, and it was a little over $2 million.
Wow.
And she's like, so we're pretty free on where we can put this.
Wow.
And so I said, show me some ideas, and we looked at some spots, and the first thing we caught was Garyton. So Garyton is actually the neighborhood on the west side of the city. It's older than the city by almost 60 years. It's actually a little bit older than the city of Gary, despite the name. But Blake Road and Independence, two long roads that really make a cross, and they're the two main streets in this older neighborhood of town, the oldest neighborhood of town, if not, pretty close. They need sidewalks. Those roads need to be completely, redone.
Redone, okay.
And so we did two things. I said, could you tell me, and I gave her the list, could you show me what it would be if we did Blake Road, Independence, Cooley, Sherwin, and May Street? And so she priced all that out, and she said, okay, so here's the thing, Mayor. If we just resurface them, that might last 10, 15 years, what have you. We can do all those, or we can make a plan where we can completely redo and make sure that Blake and Independence are done right with curbs and sidewalks, a real drainage plan, there, we can make a spot for that. And then we can start doing some improvements to the other streets in that neighborhood a little each year.
Over time,
I said that's perfect, because pretty soon we're also going to have the Central Avenue West project going on, which completes a drainage plan on the part of Central Ave that's just north of that neighborhood. We're heading to a spot from a sidewalk perspective. You'll finally be able to, let's say you're at the corner of Stone Avenue and Blake, you'll be able to walk up a sidewalk all the way to Central, then down a sidewalk all the way to the Dairy Dip, and then go Willowdale down to Stone and all the way back to your house.
Wow.
It's really a spot where for us, we want to put a focus. And like I say, this is a great community already, but if somebody is looking to move to Portage from Illinois or Lake County, we've got some neighborhoods that are, getting ready to be built or are being built.
Right.
But we also have some great homes on our west side of the city, and to be able to see the infrastructure being improved there.
Wow.
We've actually never had a stormwater plan for that side of the city. And with that coming in now, I think it's going to attract a lot of people to move into what's already here, not just have to keep moving east and south.
Mayor Bonta joins us in Founder Square to talk about what's next for the city of Portage. So Mayor Bonta, we are at Founder Square, which is a popular destination, a popular attraction in the city center. Take a moment to tell our audience more about Founder Square.
Yeah, so really, this is our city's community place. Sometimes you've got areas in town where you've got, visitors, going to, you've got, events that bring in all sorts of people, but Founder Square is where we have the most events that are really attracting and bringing in our residents. So in the summertime, we have Market on the Square, which is our farmers market, now with a handful of farmers coming here and there, previously without.
Right.
But we bring in near 1,000 to a little over 1,000 each week every Friday with vendors coming. So they take up the space on this grass and along the sides. This walkway we're on is full of vendors every Friday.
Wow.
We also have a little bit to our southeast, we've got the permanent beer garden area.
Oh, pretty
And
cool.
that's been a tremendous success this year. We've also expanded it for some big events for the family drinking area. We've got Hannah's Hope Playground behind us. That is a fully accessible playground. It was actually made to be an all-inclusive playground, for the community.
Okay.
And so between all that, like I say, we have events that handle a little under or a little over 1,000 to things like our 4th of July festival, which had just under 10,000 people this year coming for the vendors, the food, and to watch the fireworks.
That is remarkable to have 10,000 people here in Founders Square. Now, Mayor Bonta, I want to take a moment to shift from talking about this for just a moment and talk more about economic growth, right? So we were speaking earlier today about the north side of the city that seems to be receiving a lot more attention, right? And I want to talk about in terms of when it comes to economic development. And late last year, we spoke about this offline before our conversation today, that Amazon announced plans to build an $87 million data center. And you just recently, I'm so excited to announce that you just recently inked a deal with a major candy manufacturer, right? So with an eye towards industry, I want to talk about how excited you are to have world's finest chocolate, which a lot of people are familiar with because it's a big brand. How excited are you to have them come to the city of Portage?
Thrilled, as somebody who actually sold it at times as a kid, going through Catholic school from kindergarten to graduating high school. I'm very familiar with the chocolate selling fundraising, and they are truly the best at it. I mean, simply put. And Portage is the ideal location for a company like that from a factory standpoint. And as we talked about a little bit earlier, Portage is cool because we have growth coming with industry, and with that comes the jobs with it. But we're also a great place to live. And so whether it's here in our downtown or whether it's on the north side where the factory is going in, we're excited that we're harmonizing our economic growth with our residential growth, because the two really go hand in hand.
Absolutely, and I think we know that will bring so many jobs, and obviously a lot of more opportunities for housing in Portage, which is, again, the third largest city in the region. And so we are just so excited to have them come because of not only, again, what it will mean for Portage, but what it will mean for the entire region, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. So I want to talk to you about the arts for a moment, right? Because it's not something that a lot of people talk about in terms of what it means for the community. And I want to talk to you specifically about the arts because you and your wife are the co-founders of a wonderful facility called SoundTide Music School, right?
Yes.
And so I think that you, more than probably any other mayor right now, understand the importance of art and what it means for a particular community. So what is the art community like here in Portage?
Right now we have a strong presence when it comes to music in the city. We have every Tuesday, we have free music shows in the park over at Woodland Park.
Okay.
Every other Friday we have a band here that's playing for Market on the Square. We're trying to increase opportunities for people to do smaller and bigger performances, and this is also where for us, tying in and partnering with the national park is really key to let people be inspired by nature.
Okay.
We have a beautiful trail system in that way. And so like I say, I think that for us, everyone's kind of got their niche that you start with. You've got the, for us, it's the music. If you have an event with music, Portage people are coming. So what I'm excited about is increasing more attention to the visual arts, other performing arts in our city, and really taking a look at how we...
How exciting is that?
Oh, I love it. It's like taking a look about how we express that and how we show that around the community. One of the things we've talked about is getting some murals on some buildings, both buildings owned by the RDC, which is our city's redevelopment commission, and also encouraging that kind of community art with existing businesses in the city.
Yeah.
One of the things I could also add is, speaking of the parks, on the corner of Lute and Airport, we recently got a grant and we're putting in park impact fee money to build a new outdoor workout facility in the city. And that also has an art component because we're going to partner with local artists to design a mural on that. And so really just showing off the visual arts is, I think, the next thing you're going to be seeing in the coming year.
I think that is so exciting. So ahead of my time here, I had the opportunity to speak to many people, letting them know that I was coming out to kind of showcase your town, right? And one thing I heard is that I must check out at least 2 restaurants. One is just over my shoulder, and that one is Big Time Burger, and then another one was Another Round Pizza. So I want to talk more about small businesses and restaurants like those being the heartbeat of Portage. So spend some time talking about small business.
Yeah, so to give you an idea, I mean, Portage, we've got some fantastic restaurants. Big Time and Another Round are both, nearby right here on the square. And so when you have events bringing in 10,000 people or a couple thousand people each week, hopefully that shows that they're having success, and then that also attracts other people who are looking to bring a coffee shop or a restaurant or a
Absolutely.
store into the city.
Yep.
You know, we talk about the amount of space between where we're standing and City Hall and what can grow as we start to make that more accessible. And as you keep showing that people are coming to a downtown, it attracts business to it, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. So Mayor Bonta, I want to talk about something that is talked about a lot in the region, and that is the double track expansion, right?
Yeah.
So Portage, again, is Porter County's largest city and expected to grow, as we've been speaking about throughout our conversation.
Yeah.
Throughout today in the coming years. The city has several trails that are popular with residents and visitors alike, and we spoke about the Indiana Dunes earlier. So I want to ask you, is Portage working to extend trail service to the train station?
Yeah, so actually that was one of the biggest things that happened right when I came in as mayor. It was such an exciting conversation. I got to sit with Mitch Berloga at NERPC, and he
Wonderful.
asked me, what's some top priorities of yours? And when I talked about the Burns Parkway extension, he said, that's incredible. And I was excited to hear that, but I was like, why? So the Marquette Greenway Trail originally had a different route working its way around the north side of the city.
Oh,
And with us actually expressing our willingness to extend the Burns Parkway, it allowed them to say, are you cool with us taking the Marquette Greenway Trail that same route up to where it's going to hit Ogden Dunes and Miller Beach? And I said,
Okay.
absolutely. So the Marquette Greenway Trail connecting Michigan, Chicago, it was always planned to run through Portage, but there's been a lot of questions of how do you get it from where it currently is through our city.
Okay.
Now it's a much straighter shot going through a bridge. They either might build their own or hook up with our bridge that we're building, but it'll go over the Burns waterway and then go up through, like I say, what's currently undeveloped land, possibly around some of the oldest sand dunes in northwest Indiana in the
Wow.
Tolliston Dunes area.
Wow.
And then it'll run right up there to our train station.
so Mayor Bonta, I want to talk about a topic that obviously everybody in the region is speaking about, and that's that double track expansion. Now, Portage, again, is Porter County's largest city and is expected to explode in population, right, over the next few years. And so the city has several trails that are popular with residents and visitors alike. And we spoke about this earlier when we were speaking about the Indiana Dunes and all of that. But I want to ask you, is Portage working to extend the trail service to the train station?
We definitely are, and we're partnering with NERPC and the Marquette Greenway Trail Project to get that done. And as you mentioned, Portage has many trails that are popular for just literally all over, people come to use them.
Right.
But when I met with Mitch Berloga at NERPC, right when I became mayor, I told him that one of my top projects is this extension of Burns Parkway, connecting 249 to 12. He was excited. He said, that is so exciting to me. And I said, that's great. Why? Well, the reason is the Marquette Greenway Trail, which, as you know, is designed to connect Chicago to Michigan, running through the region
Right.
along the lake. It was always intended, of course, to run through Portage, to connect the east side and the west side of it. That said, they did not have a perfect route, design, or real plan to get through. They had a general idea of working around our marina, getting over Route 12, but there was a lot to be figured out in terms of how do you build the bridges you need to do that, how do you get through the environmental study needed for that. But with us doing our extension of Burns Parkway and connecting 249 to 12, they now have the ability to follow that same route or go pretty near it to be
Right.
able to extend the Marquette Greenway Trail all the way up to the train station through that route.
Wow.
So when you think about what's happening on our north side, you'll have the ability to go from Chicago to our Portage train station to get off, and you'll be right there by the national park, but also able to take the Marquette Greenway Trail any direction, including to where it connects to some of our fantastic Portage trails.
It's going to be so scenic. So I cannot ignore the fact that you are one of the youngest mayors in the region and certainly in the Hoosier state, and you are certainly a rising star within the Republican Party. And so I have to ask you, because people are asking you, do you have plans beyond your current seat as mayor? Do you have plans to run for anything statewide or even on a national level?
I don't know if you're supposed to answer a question like that this way, because I think they tell you to keep options open, but
Yeah.
truly no. So to be so young in this role, and people ask, you know, I mean, I'm 33, and I think that's young as far as a lot of mayors go.
Absolutely.
I think it really is that this is my hometown. I've been here a long time. I've been involved a very long time, both in my high school days. I stayed involved in the city while I was in college, even though I went away for college, and I got involved as soon as I could when I moved back. So to me, I know that I'm young, but I've been involved in Portage in a lot of ways for a long time.
Right.
Really, my heart is here, and I feel like what we need for Portage is a long-term vision, and I'm happy to be in Portage for the long haul to make that vision come to completion, you know?
Yeah.
One day when I'm done being mayor, I'd like to maybe run for school board. But other
Wow,
than that,
that's interesting.
we've got a great public school system here in our city. It's ready for growth as well. There's actually a great deal of capacity our school system still has. When we talk about moving into the city, we have a strong school system that's ready to handle and service the students coming in.
Yeah.
And we've got a great partnership. The school board and the superintendent, I communicate with both. The superintendent and I meet actually every other week here in the city.
That's awesome.
And we work very hard to collaborate together, and it's been such an exciting journey, you know, with her. But I say that saying that I'd love to make my next level of help in the school system one day. Well, and I worked in the schools, but coming in on that end.
Special education teacher. So let me ask you something, Mayor Bonta. What's the one thing you wish people knew about Portage?
I wish that people really knew about Portage, how strategic its location, you know, is. When you think about the fact that we are right off the lake, right off 2 major highways with 44 million people driving through every year. When you think about the fact that we're really where the water and the highway and the train and the trails all meet, I think that when I was a kid, and like I say, I got to go to high school in Lake County, you know, going to Andran. Being the Portage guy at Andran, you sometimes got the jokes of, is Portage really in the region? Is Porter County in the region? Nobody used to think Lowell was in the region, but now they do.
That's true.
Tom Dermody, who I think you guys interviewed already,
Yes,
good
absolutely.
family friend of mine.
Yeah.
LaPorte. Look at the growth
They were
happening in
just saying,
LaPorte.
yeah, but they were just saying, are we region or are we Michiana? So to your point,
I think
excellent
that
point.
the region, as we think of it culturally and in terms of population, it's growing, and it's growing south and it's growing east.
Right.
And what I'd like people to really see is that as the region grows east and south, Portage is not on the edge, we're the heart of it.
Absolutely. So Mayor Bonta, while we're outside in Founder Square, I want to ask you a question. I want to get serious for just a moment, and I want to talk about a topic that has sparked a lot of concern, right? And in some ways, outrage from some of Portage's newest homeowners, and that is Brookside subdivision. And when I was trying to navigate and understand what it was all about, just full transparency, I was not actually clear on what was going on. So I want you to take a moment, because many of our audience have probably heard about this topic but are not clear on what exactly is going on. So take a moment to share what's going on, what are the concerns with the newest homeowners, as well as what you did with the developers to help bring mediation.
Sure, and if you don't mind me using an example of something else to kind of help maybe compare and
Sure.
kind of see what I'm talking about. We just had a big power outage across northwest Indiana.
Right.
And that certainly impacted the city of Portage. But, you know, people charged the phones and the cars, people got generators, so the social media kept rolling. And I tried to make sure that the city was well informed about what we were doing in terms of what the city could do. Made sure that people knew about how the police and the street department were coordinating together to make sure that down trees, the roads were getting blocked off and the trees were being taken care of.
Right.
But I got a couple of comments or questions throughout that time period of, why is the power not back on, Mayor Bonta? And I just had to explain that the city doesn't really control the power
there.
being on. That's NIPSCO.
That's a NIPSCO thing,
And
right?
we talked to NIPSCO, and I tell people I'm a NIPSCO customer, my power was out, but at the end of the day, that's really a separate entity
Right.
than the city.
Right.
So similarly, what happened in Brookside is what I can now say, because I was as confused as anybody at first.
Good. Okay.
It happened where
Not good, but yeah.
it started with a resident having a complaint or a concern about their house, and they went to the city seeing if it was a city issue. And me, as a relatively new mayor, I like to think I know our city code well enough and what we can do. It was kind of an interesting area to say, well, I'd love to find out, do you mind if we come to your house? I brought the building commissioner, the planning director, my chief of staff. Well, what I didn't know is that the resident, he didn't just invite us to his house, he invited all of his neighbors.
Oh,
so we came, and
it became a community meeting.
It became a community meeting with almost 50 people there, all with different issues with their homes, ranging from things like cracked driveways, issues with heating and cooling in some cases, issues with the construction of the house, issues with some basement flooding. It was kind of a litany, and I could tell right away, not everything was something the city has the authority to address or the ability to address, but there definitely is something to be said for the developer being able to address it.
Absolutely.
And so our next step was we took all of the names and the addresses of everybody. We have a fantastic intern at City Hall right now, and what she did is she put together literally the whole email, list of everyone documented all their stuff. Okay. And then we got a hold of Lennar, the company that's building Brookside, and they responded extremely quickly. They were on the phone with us that day. They were out a couple days later. Okay. And then what we did is we facilitated for them, mostly because we had a building like City Hall. We allowed for residents in the community to come and meet with the representatives from the developer, 15 to 30 minute segments facilitated by the city. And then they started attending to those issues. To put it simply, when you have modern construction, and this is what I could say to put it as broadly as I can, in modern construction, there's always going to be issues with new homes. It's the risk you take building a new home these days with the way that not just one company, but everybody's building them. Even the quality and the type of wood has changed since the pandemic.
That's very true.
It's probably not coming back. So when you build a new home, you often have to make sure that the developer is keeping up and communicating with the buyers so that they can fix problems as they arise over the next couple years.
Okay.
I think that there were issues with communication, and that led to people reaching out to whoever they could. And you got this mayor who's available, and we were happy to facilitate that. And I can say that Lennar has worked very, very quickly and worked very, very hard to address those issues now that they've got a better communication with the residents,
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I want to leave with this, right? So you have made the case, you have shared with our listening audience several times throughout our conversation that you're transparent, that you're on it, that you address things head on, good, the bad, the ugly. So make the case, because I am one of probably tens of thousands of people who currently live in Illinois, who are Illinoised, that are looking to make the transition and the move over to Northwest Indiana. So make the case on why I should move my family here to your town, to Portage.
Because the best thing about Portage is what's next. The best thing about Portage is you moving here to our city, or anybody who's looking to move, to our city. And I don't want to talk down anybody, because, oh my goodness, Northwest Indiana, I love every place, and every place can be the best version of itself,
Right.
Maybe it's my special ed background. I never try to encourage people to feel better than anyone else, but to be the best version of themselves. What's so cool about Portage is, yes, we're the largest city in Northwest Indiana. I'm sorry, third largest city in Northwest Indiana, largest in Porter County. Sorry, I mixed up the county and the region for a second. But but that said, we have so much more land and room and potential. If you're looking to come here because you want to continue to commute to Chicago, or if you want to move here because you want to start a small business or a big business but start small here, I think that this is the most dynamic place in the region and the most exciting spot to be right at the ground floor as we build a city, which is still a very young city, only being founded in 1959.
Right. Well, Mayor Bonta, I will just share with you that I have enjoyed our time together at City Hall and at Founder Square. I have learned so much about your town. I will take back all of the information that I have learned for you. This interview was kind of selfish. Back to my husband so that he can consider moving here, because I know that you are a mayor that gets on top of things right away. And so, I know that you're very busy. I'm pretty sure your Facebook is lighting up, but I thank you for joining us today on Lakeshore Public Media.
Thank you so much. And when you guys are ready, give us a call. I promise it's not just you guys. We've done this for a couple other people just because the opportunity worked out.
Yeah.
Tom Cherry, who is our planning director, and me, we'd love to just drive you guys around town and show you some places if you really are house shopping.
Absolutely.
We're happy to do that.
Absolutely. He better get me the best deal. Again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All righty.